Welcome to Black Horizons. I'm your host, Chris Moore, and we thank you for joining us for this, our first news show of our 41st season. On today's show, we'll talk to the man who changed the face of real estate about the loss of dwelling house and its impact on the city. And we'll be back with the first edition of our community calendar, On the Horizon. But before we get to any of that, when the African American Workers Union was formed, it was to provide fair and unbiased representation and training to workers in a variety of trades. However, since 2002, the AAWU, as it's known, has been the subject of an investigation that some say was designed to destroy it. Here to tell us about the investigation and the state of the organization is AAWU President Calvin K. Clinton, Sr. Mr. Clinton, welcome to our program.
Thank you.
First of all, I can remember some of the newspaper articles that said that you all were guilty of malfeasance and a lot of other things that they were charging. But you've been audited now by the FBI and 3 other organizations, and this $350,000 grant that you all got, they said there was no reason to file charges against you.
Yeah, that's correct. It took us a while to get the information after the investigations from HUD, the Department of Labor, and finally the FBI. But we were confident because we knew we had done the right things, that we had not done anything wrong, and that we would be vindicated, and we were.
Yet this audit says that there were some accounting problems, that some checks were made out to cash and some they couldn't tell who the payee was, but we still won't file charges. Do you think that any of that might have led someone to look at you and say, well, something's shady here?
No, because the Allegheny County, what the part of the investigation report that indicates what Allegheny County Economic Development Department had put out as their so-called findings. We had boxes and boxes of receipts, boxes of checks. We were actually.
But if it was all in boxes like grandma somewhere, were your accounting procedures a little bit sloppy? I guess that's
as a matter of fact, what we had was what you would really call a predatory contract. Line item for the accountant. We had to have a part-time accountant because the line item for accounting was budgeted for about $30-something thousand.
So are you saying that they were giving you just enough money to fail?
Oh, definitely. There was no question, because after we had finally found out what way they wanted to audit and the procedures in terms of what documents they wanted and how they wanted them, our accountant was saying, well, listen, we could have been working with this all along if I would have been able to be full-time, but on a part-time basis, we could only send in reports, which we did every month, and then they would send us actually reimburse us for expenditures that we made. You
charged that this whole investigation and many of the newspaper articles were authored by a person who was in league with the industrial unions of this area that did not want you to succeed, thereby not letting more blacks into those said unions.
Yes, it was. As a matter of fact, what happened was prior to us getting the contract, the Post-Gazette had tried to put a negative article out to say we shouldn't even get the opportunity. And then after we were dealt with in terms of the media, in terms of this audit that the county was put together, which was really some people that were working behind the scenes trying to create an atmosphere in which, or allegations that were saying we did something improper, which was totally untrue. This person who was the reporter that wrote those articles about the union was an official with the AFL-CIO union that represents workers down at the Post-Gazette.
And they didn't think AAWU needed to exist?
No, they don't think and they still don't think that. In light of all the disparities that we see in the construction field.
Have you seen any coverage of you beyond this program that you're on today, since you got this information from the Freedom of Information Act, about your exoneration from these 3 audits?
None. And as a matter of fact, it took us to get the Freedom of Information Act because our board and our staff were looking at things and saying, listen, we haven't heard anything. We were confident we were innocent, so we weren't concerned. We were moving on and have moved on. But we wanted to get the facts back from the investigators. And then finally, after the FOI report that we requested, the Freedom of Information Act report, we finally got it after months of requesting, first in Pittsburgh, who said they didn't have any information, and then we sent it to the Justice Department in Washington, D.C., and they said they didn't have any information. And finally it came, they sent us a request to send a request back to Pittsburgh, and they came out and said the truth.
So how successful was this effort to destroy you? Are you still existing? Are you still alive?
We're still alive. We're still existing, and we're still trying to thrive. And there are some opportunities coming up in the near future that I think that will help us, the Employee Free Choice Act. But in the meantime,
well, that may not be passed, that we don't know.
Yeah, well, there's some things that we feel confident that it will be. We feel that President Obama will exceed, or I should say, he will honor his pledge to the unions that he would support that act, and I think that it will pass.
What is the state now of African American workers when it comes to getting into the unions?
Well, we just there was just the opening ceremony for the August Wilson Cultural Center. It was a prevailing wage contract project. The average wage being around $40 an hour between all of the skills.
And how many people worked on that building?
Very little. We did surveys of the visual surveys of the site almost on a daily basis, and definitely on a weekly basis.
And so here's a center built to one of the greatest playwrights in the United States, celebrated the worldwide, an African American from Pittsburgh, and white construction workers get all the money for building it, and you object to that?
We definitely object to it, and basically the African American community in the city should object to it, especially in light of the historic discrimination against African Americans in the construction industry. You remember Plan B, $809 million, very little African American inclusion in that regard.
Things have not changed since the days of Nate Smith,
when
he was as active as you are now?
Operation Dig, it basically, since that time, it hasn't changed. There hasn't been any real great or any improvement in terms of inclusion of African Americans, and we pay for it in the streets of the city.
I know what you allude to with young people not having any prospective jobs. They're out there doing illegal things to make a living. That's what you're talking about.
Exactly. The Coral Center, I should say the Sustainable Pittsburgh report that just came out, they indicate from 2001 to 2005, there was 44% unemployment amongst African American males.
So what is it going to take to change that?
It's going to take the efforts of the city of Pittsburgh and really all people of any fair-mindedness and justice in this city to come out and really change that. Are the unions
listening to you? Are they opening up their apprenticeship programs now?
Well, they play the game. I mean, as soon as there's pressure put on them, they put out a few ads, they put out a few feelers to see who they can get involved with. But primarily where they want African Americans is in pre-apprenticeship. They don't want them in really apprenticeship. And every year, every decade,
and less than 1% of the pre-apprenticeship ever get to the apprenticeships, the paying jobs.
Exactly.
What is the union doing right now? I understand you've had to go down south to New Orleans to try to get active members in jobs and working people there.
Well, we're working with a group, a coalition down in the Lower Ninth Ward. Rebuild the Lower Ninth Ward Coalition, and we've been pushing that down there in New Orleans. We've also got associates in Atlanta and Washington, D.C. Matter of fact, our board members come from both at Washington, D.C. and Atlanta, as well as Pittsburgh. But and in New Orleans, we have associates down there to help bring about the recovery in a way that brings the people back to the community, and to help them build the houses that were once there and devastated by Hurricane Katrina.
Brother, it's not easy being Marcus Garvey, but I'm glad that you're still in the effort and trying to get people jobs in the unions, good paying jobs with a livable wage. Thank you very much, and I wish you much success on your effort. Congratulations on being exonerated, even if no one knows about it unless they're watching this program.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.